The argument was stupid, one of those pointless fights about nothing and everything all at once. I slammed the door and stormed out into the night, needing air, needing space. The city streets were slick with a cold, relentless rain that soaked through my jacket almost instantly. I just walked, no destination in mind, letting the rhythm of my footsteps match the angry thumping in my chest. Block after block blurred past until I found myself in a part of town I didn't recognize. The streetlights here were sparse, casting long dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. That's when I saw it. A bus stop. It wasn't just any bus stop. It felt wrong. The sign was a faded, bruised purple, a color I'd never seen on any city transit map. There was no route number, no schedule, just a single tarnished bench beneath a sputtering light. I checked my phone, no signal. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold ran down my spine. I should have turned back, but the rain was coming down harder now, a torrential downpour that made the thought of walking home impossible. So I huddled under the flimsy shelter, telling myself any bus was better than no bus. After what felt like an eternity, a low rumble echoed down the empty street. A pair of dim headlights cut through the gloom. It was a bus, but like the sign, it was all wrong. It was the same deep, sickly purple, with windows so grimy you couldn't see inside. The destination board was blank. As it hissed to a stop in front of me, the doors folded open with a sigh of stale, musty air. There was no driver in the seat. For a moment, I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But the rain was a misery, and the bus offered an escape. How bad could it be? I stepped on. The doors closed behind me with a heavy, final thud. The interior was even stranger than the outside. The seats were upholstered in the same worn, purple fabric, and the only light came from a few flickering overhead bulbs that cast a weak, jaundiced glow. And then I saw the passengers. There were maybe a dozen of them, scattered throughout the bus, all staring straight ahead. Not one of them turned to look as I boarded. Their faces were pale, their eyes vacant, like mannequins in a forgotten department store. A young woman in a dated dress, a man in a business suit, clutching a briefcase, an elderly woman with a knitting bag in her lap, all frozen in time. I found an empty seat near the back and sank into it, my wet clothes clinging to my skin. The bus pulled away from the curb with a lurch, its engine a low, monotonous hum. We moved through the city, but the streets outside were unfamiliar, a maze of darkened buildings and alleyways I'd never seen. No other cars, no other people. It was as if we were driving through a ghost town. I tried to speak, to ask where we were going, but my throat felt tight, the words stuck. The silence was absolute, broken only by the engine and the rhythmic squeak of the windshield wipers against the glass. I looked at the passengers again, more closely this time. Their clothes were damp, as if they'd all been caught in the same rain. The businessman's suit was wrinkled and stained. The young woman's dress had a tear at the hem. And then I noticed something else, a faint, almost transparent quality to them. I could see the outlines of the seats through their bodies. They weren't just quiet. They were barely there. A chilling realization began to creep into my mind. These weren't people. They were. Echoes, remnants. The bus continued its silent journey. I watched the city dissolve into a landscape of fog and shadows. Panic began to set in, a cold, sharp fear that was far worse than the anger I'd felt earlier. I had to get off. I stood up and stumbled towards the front of the bus, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I need to get off," I said, my voice a hoarse croak. "Stop the bus." No one moved. No one responded. The driver's seat was still empty. I reached for the emergency cord, but my hand passed right through it, tingling with a strange, cold static. That's when the driver appeared. He wasn't there 1 second, and was the next, coalescing out of the shadows behind the wheel. He was tall and gaunt, dressed in an old-fashioned uniform that was the same shade of purple as the bus. He didn't turn his head, but I felt his gaze on me, cold and ancient. In his hand, he held a tarnished silver clipboard. He glanced down at it, then his voice, a dry rustle like dead leaves, filled the bus. "Name?" he asked, his voice devoid of any emotion. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a bus route. It was a collection, a final transport. I looked back at the other passengers, at their vacant stares and translucent forms. They were all caught somewhere between here and there, stuck on this midnight ride. They had boarded this bus, just like me, seeking shelter from their own storms, arguments, accidents, lonely nights. And they never got off. The driver was a ferryman, and his route wasn't on any city map. I remembered the fight, the anger, the feeling of being utterly lost. Had I been lost enough to end up here? The driver asked again, his voice more insistent. "Name? I need to check the list." My mind raced. Was my name on that list? Was this my final destination? The fight with my partner felt so distant now, so trivial. All I wanted was to go back, to say I was sorry, to feel the warmth of home again. I looked out the window, searching for anything familiar, but there was only the swirling gray mist. The bus was slowing down, approaching a final stop that I knew I didn't want to reach. The driver was waiting for my answer. My whole life, my future, hinged on what I said next, on whether or not I belonged on his spectral passenger list. I took a deep breath, the stale air filling my lungs. "I'm not on your list," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I got on by mistake. The driver finally turned his head. His eyes were hollow sockets, empty voids that seemed to pull all the light and warmth from the air. He studied me for a long, silent moment, and I felt as though he was looking straight through me, weighing my soul. He looked down at his list, then back at me. A slow, skeletal smile stretched across his face. "Mistakes happen," he rasped, "but the route is fixed. Everyone reaches their destination." Eventually, the bus shuddered to a halt. The doors sighed open, revealing not a street, but an endless expanse of gray fog. One by one, the other passengers began to stand, their movements stiff and slow. They filed off the bus and disappeared into the mist, their journey over. I was the only one left. The driver gestured with a bony hand toward the open door. "Your stop," he said. Was he letting me go? Or was this just a different kind of ending? I looked into the fog, then back at the empty, purple bus. I had to make a choice. Step off into the unknown, or stay on this ride forever. Thank you for watching Cold Trail's Diary. If this story sent a chill down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the edge of reality. Stay safe out there, and whatever you do, if you see a purple bus after midnight, just keep walking.